Welcome, Marianne Emanuelson and I are going to interview my brother, John Reinberger, known as a Globetrotter, and you've had so many publications that have written you up. Why the interest?
Well, I think travel is of great interest to people. Just going, it's the unknown, okay? And the idea is that people kind of want to figure out what the unknown is, whatever it is, and travel or distance or whatever is one of the unknowns. So, it kind of, and two, the idea is that when you do distance, it's different. It's not like you go into distance and it's the same. You go to a point, there's oceans. You go to a point, there's mountains. You go to a point where it's flat. It isn't like potentially you go into a place and it's the same as in past. So that's kind of the opening trigger of why people kind of travel. It's the unknown, the surprise or hopeful surprise. Yeah.
Well, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
you have visited every country in the world at this stage
At this
of your
stage,
life.
right? Yep.
Multiple times
Yeah.
for quite a few of them.
Uh-huh.
Name 2 countries that you go back to in a minute that you love so much.
I don't know. I was thinking about maybe Brazil, but I see they've got all the problems down there, so that kind of backs it away. And I like Brazil in the sense it's so pretty. Especially if you like greens and blues, and how prettiness triggers things. That's one thing. Other countries, I don't know. Some of the Caribbean places are kind of interesting. Many of our people, many of our viewers will visit some of that. So.
And you go to France. You love Paris.
Yeah, I love the city of Paris. Yeah. It's historical, and then it's, you can walk it, and, if you're willing to, a lot of this stuff deals with how much energy you're willing to put into it. If you're kind of like you got a cane and you're only going to walk a couple of feet, some of these things are quite difficult. Whereas if you don't mind walking and, getting onto, the subways and, all the, if you will, not the politics, but the structure, the entry points, it becomes kind of fun. And but anyway.
Well, one thing that I found interesting is, as I played as a child with my Barbie dolls, my older brother didn't really quite have the childhood that I consider a childhood for a girl or a childhood for a boy. You were out doing paper routes, and you would save your money. So while I screwed around with the Barbie dolls, just playing with them, he was making money, investing it. And didn't you once say something to the effect that the purpose of adulthood was to live out childhood dreams?
Fulfill the dreams of a child.
Yeah, and it did. I mean, you went and got, and you have he has six degrees, and you're an attorney. You've been a CPA. You've, my gosh, you've been on all kinds of committees, heads of that, and traveled the world. As you approach a age that we won't discuss?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes. What else is there in your childhood that you want to do now?
Well, kind of what you do as you get older is you start to one point transitions into the next. And I'm just hypothetically saying, well, geez, I want to go to college or something, and all of a sudden you say, well, wait a minute, maybe I want to go to grad school. One step leads to the next. And that's kind of what you get into as you go through these. They're kind of like grades. You go to first grade, then you figure, well, you learn, and you go on to second grade, and you learn some new stuff. It's a graduation kind of thing, and you never think in first grade what eighth grade is gonna. I guess I did, but what eighth grade is going to bring in. I'll just say this real quick. Eighth grade, at least I thought, if and whenever I should get there, would bring me to a point where I never have to go to school again.
I have to get in here. That's the funny part. A guy who just couldn't count down getting out of grade school would then go on and get 6 college degrees. So, I do find that absolutely fascinating and kind of a joke in some ways. What was that all about?
Yeah, like many things in life, it's kind of the opposite of what you expect.
Absolutely. I showed Mary Ann the passport.
Sure.
And I said to her when that these are becoming somewhat obsolete in some
Right.
countries. We were up in Canada, Marianne. We tried. I knew you couldn't get a passport in the airports coming into like Montreal, and you couldn't get it in Toronto, which we were there. But we had to literally walk across a bridge between Niagara, New York, and Niagara Falls, Ontario. Walk across a bridge, beg to the guy, hey, look, can you get us a passport stamp? This is like big. Yeah, it wasn't easy. And then, but when we went to the U.S., crossed over, they gave us a U.S. stamp. And I was so thrilled because I don't know if I've ever had one. In all his books, and tell Marianne why they don't give it to you.
Well, this is kind of a quick deal.
Only one in each of these very filled books does he have one U.S.
Passport
stamp.
thing.
And explain that to
Yeah,
us.
I just want to go through the electronic. My first experience with electronic, I think, was it was in 2013, and so anyway, all of a sudden I was supposed to take a flight to Brisbane and then an international flight home, and
Australia.
I wouldn't have to stop in Australia because I didn't, of course, have a visa. So anyway, sure enough, the flight, it was late and all this stuff, which meant that I had to stay overnight, which meant that I had to leave the airport. And anyway, they said, well, look, because of that, we're going to have to give you an electronic visa. And I said, well, okay, what's that? He said, well, I'll just go over here. And so anyway, I went over there, he did the thing, ran it through, and I looked for a stamp. Of course, there was no stamp.
No.
Oh, what a disappointment.
Yeah, you know what I mean, where you get a visa,
Yeah.
like when you got a visa for whatever, and
Pretty,
yeah, some deal. He says, well, how are you? I said, well, how are you going to know that I have a visa? And this was like a couple
What
of
year
years.
again?
I think it was about 2013 or something,
Okay, that's relatively
2012 or whatever. You know, it was the first time I had experienced it. So, so anyway, they said, well, we're just going to know. And sure enough, they knew it because of the number. And then they did it electronically. So when I went back, they said, do you have a visa? And I said, well, I think I do. But, you don't know.
It's
know what I mean?
electronic.
Yeah.
But it's electronic. So when they ran the numbers, they know there was a visa. But it's hard to prove. No, are there any visas here? Well, I don't, like that or, yeah. But it was that was my first experience with the electronic thing. Yeah.
So now that's becoming
It
the
start-
norm.
Well, they were talking at some point as do we really need, passports, which in some ways is obsolete. And because electronically they know you're here and not here. And some of these things are getting, and I see at the U.S. is like that too, but where you have to do the fingerprint. And they've got the fingerprint and everything in you when you enter, and the fingerprint when you leave. What do we need the rest for? You left or you came.
Right.
You
Sure.
know? So, I think it was, surprisingly, it was the Mongols that got the visas and the passports going. And this is, the 1200s.
Really?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. So
Have
what,
one of those? No, I'm just kidding.
well, a version of it, they put a gold thing or a silver around your neck, kind of. And it gave you, and I'm talking about really high up, kind of.
Okay.
It gave you automatic passage.
Really.
Yeah, so you put this, I think it was gold or it was silver, depending on different whatever statuses. So if you had that on, you could go right there, get horses, get anything you want, and you can travel. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, they had this, 6,000 miles of system or whatever. You go into all these areas or whatever, and who or what are you? Well, I got this. Oh, okay. You know what I mean, like that. So that's
Sure.
kind of how it gets going. Yeah.
So
it
in-
guaranteed safe passage.
Sure.
Yep.
So now in all your travels, do you usually go out by on yourself with doing your own tour, or are you with groups, or how are
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I generally do it alone. You find that a lot of time is used in gift shops. And I'm not saying that it's nice that you're in a group. It brings safety, brings organization. They get the best parking places, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of downtime. You're waiting for Mr. Smith to get out of whatever, to get
Gift
back,
shop.
and he's horsing around, or somebody's, there's time wasted.
We need to get to the pyramids, Mr. Smith. Look,
Yeah, like that, and like, wow, let's
I
get
gotta have
going.
a drink first. Oh, okay.
Yeah, whatever. But that kind of time filler.
Right.
And part of the shake, the deal is the shakedown at the gift stop. So it kind of turns you off
That's
as well.
a get back though. Come on,
Yeah.
they gotta make a profit.
We're in the gift shop or whatever, and then we're all leaving. Like, let's get out, and then all of a sudden you see the
Oh yes.
the person, they're getting here's a nice whatever for you.
But a lot of times too, and Marianne's great question on that. Do you go in with a tour? One thing you do is you research. I mean, this is not like, I'm going to research a week ahead. I mean, you have years of going through, and suddenly you have a memory that's unbelievable. You get to these countries, and it's like you almost know this country before you've gotten there. So plus you have a background geography, history, law, taxation. There's some others going, political science, geography. So you go in with so many perspectives, things that I would miss. Oh, he'd say, did you notice that? Not really.
Right.
But, I mean, you really
Sure.
do go in, so you're seeing things differently. So you almost, I don't want to say cheat the system, but you do pick up a lot more than I would get.
One thing I learned, and you learn this as you go through the system, is like, this was an early trip, in the late 70s. So anyway, the way it was set up is I had a driver, and anyway we could drive around. This was in Egypt, drive around Cairo, and of course you want to go out the pyramids and whatever. And so I knew that this driver would be done in 12 hours or 10 hours or something. So the trick was, okay, let's rush out to the pyramids, and the pyramids are real close to done. You can walk to them, or like 5 miles at best away. So the driver that I was with was, he thought we'd just putz around at the thing for the day. So I wanted to go potentially to the Suez Canal, which was maybe 120 miles or 110 from where we were. So it came down to this idea, and this is a real learning piece of it. How many eyefuls do I need of the Great Pyramid? Then I can move on. And the idea was, it was a very learning moment, because you know what? I want so many, but then again, I want so many of the Suez Canal, if possible.
Okay.
So I learned that timing, or how much time, and I use it in eyefuls or something, or some equivalent, is what I needed. Then I could move on. So timing, when you see these things, how many eyefuls of and I'm just saying the Eiffel Tower, or how much time, but get a clock on it so you can move on, because you only get a moment here. You're not going to be here for 3 months or live here. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Welcome back. We're here talking with John Reinberger about his travels across the globe. And he recently returned from North Korea. Or Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia. Could you tell us a little bit about that trip?
Well, I could. Yeah, I should just tell you how difficult Saudi Arabia is historically to get into. Most places in the world, you go, like we'll say we're going to Canada next week, we just go up there. Not a big deal. We're going to Mexico, we just go down to Mexico, right? Well, Saudi Arabia and much of the Middle East, and certainly in past, you had to be invited in.
Oh.
Yeah, meaning this, you had to have a sponsor on the other end, and I mean a physical person. Now, a lot of those Muslim areas in that area, the way they did it, they had big hotels or whatever, so they needed people. So they did what they call hotel visas. And the way that worked was that the hotel would sponsor you, meaning they would call up the foreign not embassy, but the foreign ministry, say, look, we got Smith and Jones coming in, so they're okay, and so they'd play the fiction, and they'd come in, and you'd come in, and that's the way it worked. But you were invited in, so if you didn't get the hotel thing or whatever, you weren't coming in. So they wanted a fee or whatever. But Saudi didn't play that game, because partly is that Saudi had so many Muslims coming in for the Hajj. That what do we need more people for? And two, they viewed themselves as they described it, as the Vatican of the the Vatican of the Near East or Near East, in the sense that we don't need outsiders, we don't need other religions, we don't need you. Okay. So the way you had to get in there was through a personal invite.
Okay.
Now there were some tricks in it, in the sense that you might be able to do a stop in. Okay, so when I first attempted to do it, and this is in the early 90s, I figured, well, look, it's pretty tough to get into that place. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a flight. I was in Lebanon. I was going to take the Lebanon to Riyadh, which is in Saudi Arabia, then go on to like the United Arab Emirates or whatever. So poor me, I got to stop and then get on another flight, but I'm going to be there so many hours. Okay, fine. So anyway, that's all lined up, tickets printed, the whole works. So anyway, I go down there, and this is in Lebanon. I guess it was Jordan, pardon me, it was Jordan, Amman, in Jordan. So I go to the airport or whatever, and, all of a sudden they're rearranging the flight, which means they said, no, you're going straight. Where do you got to go? We're going to, the United. So they just rearranged the flight, so I couldn't even get the stop. Yeah. That was the first attempt. The second attempt was sometimes you get an emergency stop, or just the way the flights are set up. So the way I did it was this. I figured, well, look, I'm going in that area, so I'm gonna go down to whatever and here to there or whatever. So anyway, I went to Yemen, which is now in war and everything else at the tip of it. So I figured, well, if I've got to go to Yemen, and why don't I go to Syria? And Syria at that time was safe. Now it's all in war and just a terrible mess. So anyway, of course, there's no flight from Yemen direct to, or from Sana'a in Yemen direct to Hamas, which means, oh, poor me, I have to go to Saudi Arabia. Fine. So anyway, I go to Saudi, and then too, they aren't a connect. There isn't the one the next day. So I was able to get a transit visa, and then you can get in there.
Yeah, how long can you have the transit visa?
You can have them up to, I think, in 48 hours, but generally they're 24. You know what I mean? But you don't. I didn't know if I was going to get it until that day. Meaning like this, I'm leaving tomorrow. I didn't know until that evening until that thing was going to work.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, how would you like that? You got all this money and the cancellations or whatever. But luckily it worked out. But
eventually, though, you wanted to see it.
Yeah, wanted a better view of it. But anyway, they've been opening it up or whatever, and it was only they've got a new person pretty much taken over, and he's kind of modernizing it or whatever. And
women drive
I was going to
now,
say,
right?
yeah, women are driving now.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I asked those guys about the women driving. I said, geez, I see you're going to open that. Because I was there in April, to give you some feel of it. And that was the big thing, that women could drive. And, well, why couldn't they? What's the big deal? But anyway, I talked to some guys, some of our tourist people, whatever, and they said, well, they've been driving for years in the rural area. Just necessity. It's not like you've got a private, that's how they got around it. They had private chauffeurs. Did it.
Life is nice, Marianne.
Yeah.
Well, when you're an oil-rich country.
Country, yes.
Tell us about the wealth there. Could you feel it?
You can see parts of it, okay? And they transferred some of their palaces. Yeah. Yeah. Which is, kind of, because here's the story. You get so much money. It kind of happened to Britain, had the same problem. Okay, this is about 200 years, more than that ago, 200, I suppose almost 250. People would go to India, make all this money, okay? Then they would come home back to Britain. Right. What would they do with the money? Well, what are you going to invest it in? Well, there wasn't anything to invest in. So what did they do? They built these beautiful castles. Yeah, that's what they did. It's similar to what has happened in Saudi Arabia. They built. There's just too much. What are you going to invest in? It doesn't pay. There isn't enough return. buy all the land, then what? You know what I mean? You know, but it's amazing that can you have so much money? I'll take my chances at it, but you know that the only way you can get rid of it is to distribute it or spend it or
Sure.
and you know on things that can never generate return. Yeah.
Well, now the modern amenities
Uh-huh.
in Saudi, hotel. I mean, you have all of them, correct? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
do they have the big name? Do they get into the big name hotels,
Absolutely.
the Hyatts and
Yeah,
the
they
Hiltons?
get into all your
My
favorite.
dream is to go to a Hilton there. Are you kidding me? Oh.
Yeah, they get into all your favorite foods. I ate at McDonald's a couple of times because the
Really?
food. Well, I'm not used to their food.
Okay.
You know, I mean,
I told Marianne, I said, one time you said, I go, how come you don't try the food? You said, I want to I want to for sure.
well,
live
I was
to
thinking
the
about.
next
I was
day.
thinking about. I was thinking about being a survivor. You know what I mean?
This
You know?
bug was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, you're not used to this. You know, you don't know if it's, you know, well,
What it is?
yeah, you don't. You know, most stuff you can look in and describe it, right? Like, well, like that looks like peas. That looks like some carrots.
I don't
You know,
eat vegetables.
Or what? But you know what I mean when you get an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, I couldn't describe.
Donkey, giraffe.
Yeah, it's probably going to be, you know. I
Dog.
don't. Well, to be seriously honest about it, it's probably going to be male camel. A lot of it.
Okay.
Because they don't only keep a you know handful. You know, if you got camels,
Yeah.
you know, they only keep maybe one or two around. The rest of them are used for stews and unknown stuff.
You know, I hate to
Yep.
do this because the
Oh,
time's
I'm
limit,
sorry.
but I want her to, because I mentioned you had been to North Korea.
Hmm?
And you're one of the few who I know. So I mean,
Yeah.
and find out about that, Marianne, because that was quite an adventure.
Yeah, you can go to North Korea, and I think even today, though, the president supposedly banned it or whatever. The State Department, I guess, a year ago in September, said that no Americans can be or should be or will be allowed in North Korea. Well, I think you can go now, and I if I heard it right, is this: you can go, but you have to have a will. So that scares it.
Whoa.
That's what I thought I heard.
Whoa.
I thought I heard that.
That's deep.
And I think you can do it through Best Way of Canada, but you can use outside sources to go there.
Really?
Yeah. Now, very few people go there.
Yeah.
Gee, I can't
Um,
imagine why.
Well, it's
Did you
partly
like it?
it's different. You know what I mean? You know how do you?
You have a lot of countries to
Yeah.
compare with.
Yeah. Which means in some ways when it's different, it's memorable.
Mhm.
Otherwise, so much of this stuff looks like what I'll call the Western society. You know, looks like home kind of. Yeah.
Describe it. Were they micromanaging you, always watching you move?
Yeah, they are. You know, the minute you get there, I had three guys just grab, you know, two of them anyway, and one was the driver. You know, they're right on you, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
You're a foreigner.
Yeah, well, they know you, but anyway. And then they, you know, use themselves as tourist guides or whatever, but in fact, really, you could say foreign, you know, essentially being trained for foreign duties. You know, they watch American mannerisms, they practice their language through you, you know, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
You know, and they're truly natives, but, you know, there's kind of a hidden agenda.
Did they look happy, the people?
They don't look at you. I mean, here's
Oh, that's different.
yeah. This is kind of you drive down the main street with double roads, and maybe you see one car, and you see people walking around or whatever, and they don't look at you.
Really?
Yeah, you know, most people like a car drives by or something. Oh, wow! Especially when there's only five, maybe going in.
Especially when you're one of the few.
Well, I'm just thinking. Yeah, they don't even look at you when you're walking around.
That's
You know, I'm
amazing.
Caucasian, and I'm in
Yeah,
that kind of a
right,
deal.
Absolutely.
You know, they look down. They don't even look at you.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, it's something you're not used to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they tell me now that the black market is opening in North Korea, which, you know, sooner or later, if you will, corrupt the system.
Mm-hmm.
But there was none of that when I was there.
Okay.
Yeah. But of course, your hotel accommodations is on an island, so you can't. You're told not to leave it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they mean it. You know, because in two, it's
You've seen some of these prison terms they've gotten for
Yeah.
doing things, tearing a poster down.
Yeah, yeah,
things
you know,
like that.
you know,
I
there's-
wouldn't- whatever
yeah.
you guys say, I'm.
Right, you
Yeah, you
follow
fo-
their rules.
yeah, you follow, and then if you want to take a picture, you have to get their okay. So, for example, if I wanted a picture of you people, I would have to ask my person, can I? They had Mr. Kim, I forgot, or some names, you know, simple names. Mr. Kim, can I take a picture of these people? No, no, no. And there wouldn't be any real reason. Sometimes they do it in just to enforce discipline, you know, that kind of thing. But so you'd have to do that. And then another thing was I wanted special permission. I kind of like libraries and things, you know, you just different stuff. So I said, well, look, can I see your national library? And, you know, that kind of gums up. And I was a group.
Tourist ever asked that?
First of all, I'm a group of one, so I got 2 guys and a driver. So there's really three of these people on me. So anyway, he had to get permission, whatever, to see this library. And I also wanted to see they got a subway there. And I don't know if you're familiar with the DC subway.
The metro?
Metro,
Yes.
yeah. There's probably the deepest piece is up by the zoo.
Okay.
To give you an idea, I think it's like about I don't know, almost 300 feet deep. You know, you go down that long,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
You'll know when you get there.
Elevator.
Yeah,
Ooh,
yeah. Well, the one in South Korea was even deeper.
North Korea or South
Or North Korea, and it went down like 500 feet.
Really?
Yeah, imagine that deep down. I mean, it kept going.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
Well, now communication.
Oh,
Did you ever have any communication issues when you were with all your travels?
I'm going to say generally no. Part of it is, and this is interesting about communication, is you have to keep language basic. You know, and essentially it's I go, you know, hungry, I get the idea, or you know what I mean, you got to go to whatever, to the restroom, they get the idea, you know, or hotel, or you know, I point. You know, a lot of it is, you know, is manner.
Basic.
Yeah, the basic stuff. I mean, if you're gonna, you know, to get into some hypothetical physics problem or what, you know, I mean, that's not the place to do that. You're not gonna. But the basics, okay? Airport, you know what I mean, or car. You know, just they get car over here. You know what I mean? They put their own language into it. But like that is generally pretty simple. Or sometimes you might have to pull a couple of people together. Like we'll say you're walking in there, like, and I'm just saying, I want to find out where the taxi. So what I would do sometimes, I'd gather a crowd, like, taxi, how do I go? Taxi. And then somebody might know it. You might talk to one, and he meant, and then they, you know what I mean? So you get a feel of it. But you have to kind of pull it together.
I'll say.
And keep it simple. Yeah.
And be polite.
Yes, thank you, sir. You know, I was always polite. I always used the English, sir, ma'am. You know what I mean? You know, like that. Instead of, sometimes people, when they go into foreign places, they'll use the whatever. But, you know, they're botching it. You know what I mean? They didn't get the whatever. But, you know, as long as you keep to your own culture or whatever.
Right.
And, and I was, always bowing. And, yeah. Thank you, sir. You know what I mean? And so they saw the gestures. Gestures are very important, I thought. Yep.
Well, a few years ago, well, actually more than a few, when you finished all the countries and you were met at the airport by several television stations, CBS radio, or WCCO radio, people, and then it got syndicated because I knew people in Nashville who had seen you through the footage that moved on. Okay, the anchors, Amelia and Frank, said, or Amelia turned to Frank and they showed you coming back and at the airport, and she said, he must be a trust fund baby.
I wish I was.
So I'm asking about how much estimated do you think all your travels have cost?
I think that it cost me, in my dollars at the time, about $250,000 plus.
And that would be what now?
That I'm saying it's $500,000 now. You know, when you adjust the. You know,
I would agree easily.
Sometimes, airfares and I'm using inflation, have really gone down. Yeah. I used to figure, this is years ago, and I'm in the 70s, at 10 cents a mile, you know, and maybe we're at 12, and sometimes we can get better than that. So when you see an airfare and you say, well, I'm just saying to Los Angeles for 200, and, you know, and it's, I don't know, almost 4,000 miles, or just short. You know, you're at 5 cents a mile. That's probably a pretty good price, and I'm talking 10 cents, and without that, you know, without inflation adjustment. But
And then
Yeah.
about how many miles? I know you've gone to many countries multiple times, but about how many miles do you think you've traveled in your life?
I tried to figure out just on these trips one time, and this is, you know, and these are estimates and whatever. I think that just to see it in the basics, and there's been some trips since, but it was about 775,000 miles was an estimate.
And there's been trips since. Yeah.
But
I
you know, just an estimate. You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
you know, how far is that? Well, must be that. You know, it's so rough, but the idea was interesting because, you know, was it 1 million or 2 million? No, I wasn't anywhere near it. But the idea was it gives you a feel of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you've had fascinating stories, that's for sure. But this is one that, especially in nowadays, do you remember? And I don't know what country it was, but they couldn't find his luggage, so they allowed him to go into the belly of the plane. Him, I mean, now imagine doing that nowadays.
Yeah.
Where was that? It was crazy. I mean, yeah.
I took a flight from Thailand to India. And sure enough, I got to New Delhi, or that airport, New Delhi. And the luggage is in there. And I, you know, turned it in and all this stuff and all those sheets and whatever. And I said, geez, it's got to be on there. I had the supervisor verify it and blah, blah, blah. And I know it's for sure there. So they said, well, look, why don't you come with us? So anyway, we went on the 747 looking for it. Meanwhile, people are waiting like, wow, we got to get going. This thing's going on to, I don't know, London or wherever it was going. Yeah. So anyway, I'm holding up the plane looking for the luggage.
Inside the plane.
Yeah. So I've been in
Yeah.
the thing. So anyway, of course, they didn't find it. But so, you know, that's always a mess.
Did you ever find it?
Yeah. I came home or whatever, and sure enough, got a call from the airport and said, well, your luggage is
Wow,
in it.
that's
Unfortunately,
amazing.
you got to go through customs with it. You know what I mean? So
Oh, wow.
I got to go over there, screw around customs, and get the
Right.
luggage, and yeah.
You know what? We're out of
But it all
time.
worked out.
But always fascinating. I'll never forget the time. I mean, most people appreciate to hear about your travels. But one time they asked him, "Oh, where'd you go?" And he says, "I went to Bombay." And they said, "Oh, is that near Bemidji or Brainerd?" And John went like this.
Kind of.
Yeah, kinda. And he was very nice about it. I probably would have said, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
But anyhow, thanks so much
Sure.
for joining us. And Marianne and I always enjoy people who have enlightened,
Oh, sure.
educated us, and you guys, and you have. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you, guys. Yep, very good. Thanks. Yep.